Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's meeting. Thank you for coming. We'll start the meeting with the invocation from Pastor Bob Rogner. He's with Peace Lutheran Church in Winghaven. And then David Hammond will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Could everybody please stand?
We make our beginning in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, you have given us this good land as our heritage. Grant that we remember your generosity and constantly do your will. Bless our land with honest industry, truthful education, and an honorable way of life. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil course of action. Grant that we who came from many nations with many different languages may become a united people. Support us in defending our liberties, and give those to whom we have entrusted the authority of government the spirit of wisdom, that there may be justice and peace in our land. When times are prosperous, may our hearts be thankful, and in troubled times do not let our trust in you fail. Eternal Lord, ruler of all, graciously regard those who have been set in positions of authority among us tonight, that guided by your Spirit, they may be high in purpose, wise in counsel, firm in good resolution, and unwavering in duty, that under them we may be governed quietly and peaceably, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Okay, first we'll start the public hearing on the 2016 St. Charles County budget. Is there anybody who'd like to come forward and make any comments on the 2016 budget?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, A.C. Dienoff, County Resident and Public Advocate. Concerning the budget, I know that there was talks and discussions with our police chief, and I know that he's getting information that we have adequate law enforcement protection in the Field Operations Division. As you all know, our county population is over 400,000 people now, and with that population, unfortunately, we have to add staff to the Field Operations and Patrol Division of the County Police Department. I'm ensured that the police chief is getting those figures together for what staffing needs that he desires to make sure that our county residents are safe and sound. But I just want to make sure that you're budgeting for next year for those increasing positions if and when they're needed. That's the number one priority of county government is law enforcement, and I want to make sure that we have those budget funds readily available for those needs when they arise. The second item of concern is the family arena. I'm not sure, it's been quite some time since we built the facility. There was a plan that said that it would break even. Well, I'm still waiting for that year to break even. We're in deficit spending with that facility. We have some costs that are off the charts, some equipment costs in the recent years that I've criticized this council for spending for scoreboards, for enhanced advertising contracts, et cetera. You know, you need to bring these costs under control and under budget. The county administration needs to work harder in making sure that we balance that budget for the family arena. It's in deficit spending. It's never shown a profit since we've owned the building and built the building. The last thing is parks. We need to come up with a solid plan. I was kind of miffed and kind of put off by the last work session of the county council involving the development of our county parks. As we all know, a sales tax, a user tax goes to pay for that for out-of-state purchases over $2,000. It's mostly paid by corporations and businesses, but we need to have solid foundation and solid funding. The last project that we developed the park, it was a one single bid. It was hilarious because it was $5.8 million when you should have chopped it up in different projects. So taxpayers' money was cognizant and that it was spent in the appropriate way. to give it to a single bidder is just ridiculous, haphazard, and not the right way of doing things. I don't know if that plan has been given by the county administration, but I think the county executive was perturbed at the last workshop and gave marching orders to his administration. But I think we need to really home in on what lands to purchase for the future so they don't get away as they're up for option right now, and what properties to develop. And I appreciate you hearing my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak about the 2016 budget? Okay, seeing none, that closes the public hearing on the 2016 budget. Now we'll open up the floor for public comments. We allow 3 people per, 3 pro and 3 con per topic, and 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'd like to commend all of you guys in the tremendous work that you do. We don't, as citizens, we don't really get a chance to thank you very much, but we really appreciate what you've got. I'm Bill Meinhold. I live at 1150 Wedgewood, St. Charles, Missouri. I've left a handout for each one of you people. And basically what I'd like to talk about is the I-70 5th Street interchange reconstruction. My residence is located about a mile from this intersection. We've lived there since 1971. And in my knowledge, there are very few accidents, and I don't think there's been a fatality there. If there is, I don't know about it. I attended one of the public hearings. I was out of town on the other ones. And I came away with more questions than I did answers. I'd like to know if there was a traffic study, safety study done. What were the results of the citizens survey done by the county? John Gripes, who said there was a study done, there's no results that I know of. Where was the results from the business community that was contacted? John Gripes, who again said there was something done there, but I don't know. Where's the funding coming from? We're spending about $18 million. MoDOT coughed up $1.2 million, less than 10% of the project, gross project. Now I know that we're all strapped for money, MoDOT, the county, the city, me too. And I'm sure some of you people are. You know, what's the procedure for approving this project? I was told this was a MoDOT high priority project. If it is, why aren't they funding it? Why are we giving our money to MoDOT? You know, they're doing less than 10%. We're doing well over half. I didn't do the numbers, but we got $13 million in there with the city and the county. I haven't talked to the city people yet, but I will. And I feel the design of the project leaves a lot to be desired. Adding new exits and entrance ramps on the south side of the Interstate 70, one way only on the south side of Interstate 70. And, you know, just briefly, there are many MoDOT projects that have been a disaster for the business people. The one at Cave Springs in the city of St. Peters, where you drive out there and you can't go straight ahead, you got to go right.
Sir,
and those people have really, really lost out. In closing, I'd like to say that the timing is bad, the funding is bad, and at this time the reconstruction of the intersection is not necessary. Funding of the project could be used better on other projects since the county has money for MoDOT. I feel our taxes for road improvements should be reduced.
Thank you.
I don't think the money's been transferred yet. I'd like to see the council vote not to transfer the money to MoDOT.
Okay, I'm not, here, just so you know, so everybody knows, the rules are when the public comment, we allow you guys to talk. We do not engage. That's just our rules. So we are not going to answer questions when you're asking us up here. We'd be here all night. Mike Klinghammer, if you want to contact him at his office, he'll be more than happy to address those questions. that would be the format, and I'm sure he'll get back with you and let you know what, and answer your questions for you.
Happy to.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on Fifth Street? Okay. Sir, no, we don't do it that way, though, just so you know.
I'd just like to give you my email address.
Okay, can you just hand it to one of the girls there on your speaker?
Speaker's card.
Yeah.
Scott.
Okay, good, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next topic. Who would like to come up and speak about any other topic here in the county?
That,
Yes.
what I want to speak about is the bill. Will you give me time after the bill is talked about?
Are you the presenter?
No.
Well, typically, if you're the presenter, we will ask you to come up. We'll ask you questions for engagement while the bill's on the floor. If you want to talk about, we allow 3 speakers per topic, 3 pro and 3 con. So if you want to come up and try to make your points, and I know there's a lot of people here on a couple of the issues, so try to not be repetitive over the same. Try to broaden the argument to different perspectives if you can.
Okay. I was thinking it was like zoning and planning, sorry. My name's Shelley Brown. I am up here regarding bill number 4293. I've lived in that subdivision for 22 years. I have a petition from almost everybody in our subdivision that is against it. There's just so many issues, and I hope I can make it through 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to tell you what my issues are. I live right behind that. I want to know when the big trees fall out of my yard onto this lot that's like 500 feet from my house, whose responsibility is it? If a ball gets thrown over there because there's no really good barrier wall and crashes a windshield, whose responsibility is that? Another thing, the drainage. Our subdivision is in total water now, and he's going to put a car detailing and only spend $8,000 on engineering for drainage. It's going to cost $80,000 to get it right. $8,000 is not enough. I want to know exactly where the entrances are going to be at this location. I want to know what the barriers are going to be. Or is he going to put trees, fences? Am I going to have a concrete fence? Am I going to have trees behind my fence? I want to know what I'm going to be looking at when I'm trying to see the sunset. The traffic right now into our subdivision, we have 1 entrance and 1 exit. It's going to be totally blocked now because of these cars. He told zoning and planning he's going to put 20 cars on there on his sheet, but he verbally said 40 cars when I was in that meeting. 40 cars on that little bitty lot is going to have to go up directly to the edge of my subdivision. We already have 1 business on one side, 1 on the other side. That's going to block my whole 1 entrance with businesses. For ambulances, police, it's going to make the crime go up. And the other thing I'd just like to say is everything that's ever been around there fails. We had a veterinarian spend $500,000 on an office that's right across from the storage place. He was out of there within a year because he was making no money. You know where he's at? He's around the corner where the cars can see them from the highway. This place where he's trying to build this, well, has no traffic. And if he makes money there, there's an issue because everyone knows everything fails. It's a residential little area. It's not for businesses. You guys got us zoned in here, this little bitty residential piece amongst all these businesses. You should at least take in consideration our subdivision with the water, the traffic, and the fact that you're going to put a pavement there and it's all going to be all from the grass and it's just going to go away because he's not going to be there long.
Okay, thank you,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you, I appreciate it.
We could have this next speaker on 4293 in favor of 4293?
My name's Danny Wappelhorst. What we have there now is a old gas station, old service station. The property does go all the way up to their entranceway. What we want to do is work with the gravel and asphalt that's there, redo that, and put parking just around the building. So up where that enter exit would be, we don't feel the need that we need to go that far. Our site plan shows that we would just add asphalt around the building and put a 2 or 3 car, detail, one little showroom garage on the property next to the building that's already there.
Okay, is that it?
That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll know you're here, and if we
Okay,
have questions when the bill comes up.
The engineering cost that we got from Bax for us to do the rainwater and everything like that, his bill would be $8,000. We have to put a rain garden in and a lot of other things of that nature. So there's going to be some heavy cost to this project. I think he's going to be around $125,000 or so when it's all said and done. And basically, it's just going to be a parking lot going around the existing structure. And an additional little shed to do, or not shed, but warehouse to do detailing and things like that, and maybe a showroom for a couple cars is what it is. So it would be an improvement, I think, to what's there currently.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have our next speaker who is against Bill 4293.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to us. I won't take up the 3 minutes because Shelley has already told you the majority of our concerns. My name is Laura Mitchell Harris. I've owned the property at 5 Kingsway Drive, which is also directly behind these buildings, for 18 years now. My major concern, addition to everything that Shelley has just announced, is the bugs. We have already issues with mosquitoes that we deal with every summer, and if you add additional lights and additional water, we're going to have additional bugs. So what does St. Charles plan on doing about those? Additionally, am I going to have to buy new blinds and everything for the back of my house for the lights to not shine in and keep my entire family up at night? Other than that, all of my claims, I agree with Shelley. That's just my additional ones. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there another speaker who would like to speak in favor of this bill?
My name is Parminder Singh, and I'm the one trying to buy that property. I've been in this business like about 15 to 20 years almost. I'm trying to do it, good cars, and it's not going to be anything wrong. Like they said, it's going to, last time she mentioned, it's going to be, I'm going to be out of business and soon, and then it's going to be people coming over there on their parking lot going to drug or this and that. But it's not going to happen, I know what I'm doing, it's 15 years on this business. And if she, somebody else, want to look at my website, what kind of cars I keep it, that area is going to look really good once that car lot is there. We're going to put some money on that property and make it, the building nice, and then the parking lot, and it's going to look good in front of the car. The highway. So I would say, we'll try my best, to do it, the right business there. I'm not going to hurt nobody. If they are talking about balls going to come over to the cars, but we are not going that far to where the residence area. So we are staying close to the building, and probably, like she said, mentioned like 20 parking lots. Probably, even we have put like 60 cars over there. We can still put it, less than half of that area, parking lot, and make it like really good on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker who would like to speak opposing Bill 4293?
Hello, my name is Rosalia Vitale Mayfield. I've lived at 11 Kingsway for 27 years, and my property is directly behind where they want to build this car lot. And it's, a lot of people don't know, our subdivision is built on an underground creek. And every time we get a lot of rain, or maybe not even so much a lot of rain, everybody that has a basement floods. And I don't have a basement, but my backyard floods. And there's kind of a slant from where the gas station used to be. So all the water that comes when it rains comes into my backyard. I have like a foot of water at the end of my fence that I can't even go out there without being in a foot of water. That's how bad it is. So my concern is this past summer we had a lot of rain, and Mosquitoes were so bad that we couldn't even go outside and enjoy my backyard in the summertime with my family because we were eaten alive no matter what time of the day we would go out there. So with the water being the way it is now, and if they're going to be detailing cars, and we have a problem with the sewer system, I think that's only going to contribute to it and make it worse with the water damage and all of it coming into my backyard. I'm concerned. My grandkids come over to play. We have a garden every year, and I want to be able to enjoy my backyard and not be worried about the water damage and the lights attracting more mosquitoes and that we can't even enjoy the backyard. So that's my major concern. And another is the traffic coming in and out of the subdivision since we only have one way going in and out. The cars on one side and the Loctite storage and people kind of zooming on the service road. I think it's a very dangerous area. I've been there a long time. I've seen a lot of things come and go as far as businesses. It used to be really good right there before they closed the highway. It used to be Callahan Road. There was a stoplight, and we would come straight into our subdivision. But since it was closed, the gas station that was there went out of business because they didn't get enough business there. And there was a further down the road, another gas station and a restaurant. They also closed. And then it was a turnover by a bar there, and that also closed. Nothing has been able to maintain there since it's been closed. So we're just kind of like a corner subdivision here, and we don't really think this car lot is going to make it there. There's already 6 of them down the road on the other side. We're just worried about the safety of our subdivision
Okay.
with these things.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
There's just, we have one more speaker. Is there anybody in favor of Bill 4293? Another speaker? Okay, that concludes that one. Is there anybody else who'd like to talk about any other bill that's on the floor tonight?
Thank you very much, members of the County Council, AC Dinoff, County Public Advocate and resident. There is a bill that is very concerning on your agenda, and that's Bill number 4299. It deals with lobbying favors and contracts to political foes to supposedly represent the county government in Jefferson City when we have numerous elected officials, including our county executive that makes 6 figures, a county vehicle, plus a big pension. We have a director of administration. We have 2 assistant director of administrations. We have another lobbyist who's a registered lobbyist with the Missouri Ethics Commission that is employed full-time in the county executive's office. They used to be in Jefferson City during the 3 months. Why are we paying in this contract for lobbying contracts $36,000 that's coming from the executive budget, $42,500 from the road and bridge fund, $42,500 from the transportation fund, $30,000 from the county councilor's office? That's a lot of money for lobbying, especially when we're employing the former Speaker of the Missouri House of Representatives to do lobbying. That's your job as elected officials. That's your job as the county executive to be in Jefferson City working on behalf of county residents, our 400,000 residents. This is a ludicrous expenditures of public funds, especially when we have a full-time person working in the county executive that's registered as a professional lobbyist with the Missouri Ethics Commission. Also, what's concerning is, I don't know if the county election authority director testified in the budget hearing earlier this evening, but a number of years ago, we had 2 different data systems for election data information. We have the state MVCR system, and we had the AS400 system, which was an older system. There was a full-time employee position that was created as the MVCR person to oversee the turning the AS400 into the state database for voter registration cards. We just won a very expensive, I believe it was $87,000 in a professional employee study. What did that study say? in terms of the results of the staffing levels at the election authority. It comes down to, do we use the 5% fund or the 400 fund to pay for that employee? Is the work even there for that employee because we don't have the AS400? Everyone in the office is certified to run the MVCR equipment and the system. And so I question whether the work is even there. Mr. Krismer wants you to pay for it through the general fund. This is a clear election service provided for elections and should come from the 400 fund. He's mad because you made him responsible and you made it transparent and made sure that he was dotting the I's and crossing the T's. You remember, he spent close to $800,000 of taking from tax entities throughout the county. You forced him to pay back the money. This is checks and balances. I think that either position needs to go away because it's not needed, or it needs to be paid by the 400 election fund and not by the general fund. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. When you guys talk, make sure you fill out a speaker card, and for those who have spoken, please fill out one. It's for the public record. Okay, are there who else would like to come up? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mary Callier. I'm speaking in opposition to the rezoning request 4291. As the first residents of Windcastle for 18 years, we've loved watching it grow. One flaw. The beautiful curving streets have at least 3 blind spots that have been the source of accidents and many near misses. Our daughter hit a motorcycle. They didn't see each other coming, and she could have killed him. With no sidewalks, those of us who use our neighborhood for exercise and family strolls must be cautious. And now, the plan presented to you is insisting that those 2 streets become cut-through streets. We met twice with Lombardo Homes, and any concern regarding road safety was met with annoyance and condescension. The Planning and Zoning Committee was presented with an insulting 1-day study insisting that our streets could safely handle thousands more cars. But I invite you to come to Windcastle, drive the curving streets, take a walk to my home, from my home to the sidewalks on Pittman Hill, heading down to the Katy Trail. You'll see what I mean. Allowing those 2 streets to become cut through will simply increase the already precarious situation. Plat 1 buyers always knew there might be a Plat 2. But I promise you, a 3rd edition was a carefully kept secret, and to say we always knew there would be a cut-through is not true. The families who live here, we know what we have. We don't take it for granted. Windcastle's a gem. Right now it feels secluded, a refuge. As lifelong residents of St. Charles, Gary and I never wanted to live anywhere else. We watched as others moved across the river when choosing their forever homes. When the time came, we found Windcastle, sold to us as a secluded nook on the bluffs. In the future, someone else will buy my home. I want for them what it has been for us. To think that all that would be spoiled by the demands of a St. Louis lawyer and an out-of-state contractor is just wrong. The property owners have every right to sell it or develop it, but they want to capitalize on the reputation of Windcastle with a plan that will deteriorate the values of the existing homes, make our streets less safe, and forever change the feel of this unique neighborhood. Please follow the lead of the Planning and Zoning Commission and say no to that plan. I hope that the intentions of this council are to promote the integrity of St. Charles. You live here. You know how important neighborhoods like ours are to the reputation and future of St. Charles. Think about it. When the lawyer leaves and the contractor takes his money back home, we'll be left with a cut-through community and devalued homes. I'm asking you to please think hard about these concerns before you make your decision. Can I see a show of hands of everybody from Windcastle? Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Could I have a speaker? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of Bill 4291?
Good evening, Councilman and Chairman. My name is Lee Cannon. I'm a professional engineer and a professional traffic operations engineer working with CBB. Our company's been around for 42 years, and I've been there approximately half of those, completing traffic impact studies for a variety of public and private entities. We work really on both sides of the equation, looking at traffic safety and capacity issues. I completed personally the traffic impact study that you see in your packet this evening for the Bluffs at Windcastle, and during your deliberative process, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding specific issues in that study. There are 76 existing homes in the subdivision, and the developer is proposing to add 38 homes. That will increase traffic on Windcastle Drive by approximately 50%. We looked at the intersections of Pittman Hill, Windcastle Drive, Fairdale, and Jacob Station, Towers Road, and Jacob Station as well. The existing volumes in and out of the subdivision are relatively low, and the streets have been designed to accommodate those. Under 60 vehicles per hour currently, or less than 1 vehicle per minute on average. I would like to focus on some of the issues: capacity, safety, and character. We've heard that the streets are unsafe. However, a lot of that safety is based on design and has really nothing to do with volume. The streets should be safe for the first car that uses them, or the 1,000th car that uses them. When streets are overloaded, safety becomes a problem, but that's not quite the case in this condition. The streets are county public streets, built to county standards and maintained by your county highway department. And to our understanding, there's no records of crashes or high hazard locations on Windcastle Drive or the other internal streets. These streets aren't cut-through streets. These streets are streets that have been proposed in the development plan to follow along a long-term plan by the county with stub streets to have connectivity between neighborhoods, which cuts down on traffic using other routes and provides convenience for all users, whether the Fairdale folks go to Pittman or the Windcastle folks go over to Jacobs. The character of the street's also important. Residential streets can carry up to 2,000 to 2,500 vehicles per day. And with all of the homes proposed, we won't even get to 1,000 cars per day. So only half of the limit which roadway engineers talk about having an adequate character for residential activity. The capacity, though, of a 2-lane street is probably more on the order of 8,000 to 10,000 cars a day. I'm not talking about the capacity, I'm talking about the character. When I do talk about the capacity, there are no current capacity problems, there are no negative impacts from the proposal, and we did not find the need to recommend any improvements. All intersections studied operate at level of service B or better, which, if you recall from previous traffic studies, is a highly desirable condition. Again, I'll respect your time, and I can answer any questions that you might have during the deliberative process.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition to Bill 4291?
My name is Gary Ruff, live at 21 Windcastle Drive, St. Charles, Missouri. Put my glasses on here. We bought our lot in March of 2000, started construction November of 2000, moved in July of 2002. What drew us to Windcastle, and I'll put these up here. What drew us to Windcastle were the billboard Schaefer Homes displayed on Highway 94 and Pittman Hill Road. Custom-built homes from the 500s, secluded, as in not seen or visited by many people, sheltered and private. The pictures you have were developed May 29th of 2001. The only additional plat that we knew about was Plat 2. It was set at the P&Z meeting. There was always a connection to Plat 3. That's inaccurate because Sue Schaefer didn't own the property in Plat 3 until July of 2006. The last lot in Plat 1 was sold in 2005. The exhibit drawing you have by Volts Incorporated for Schaefer Homes in October of 2005, prior to the 2006 purchase, shows the proposed lots, 30, and no connection to Fairdale. Mr. Goss told us they would follow some of our covenants, but not all. One concerns garages. They have street-facing garages. We don't allow them. Another difference not related to covenants is the absence of curbs and sewers in 2/3 of the development, although they're required, as stated in Unified Development Ordinance of St. Charles County, Title 4, Land Use, Chapter 410. We were told the fire department required a second entrance when units exceeded 100. We would have 112. There are other subdivisions that exceed 100 but still have one entrance, so exceptions are made. My wife and I met with Assistant Chief Fire Marshal Mark Bailey on November 30th, and he confirmed that ordinance. He also told us Lombardo could apply for a variance. We asked if they've done so. The answer was no. Why didn't they apply for the variance when they knew the Fairdale connection was such a major concern for us? Mr. Goss presented artist renditions instead of actual pictures of their homes to P&Z and claimed they were equal value to Windcastle. Look at the pictures in your packet you received, or better yet, drive through Windcastle and then a Lombardo development and see if you agree. Mr. Goss also said Plat 3 was to be a transition subdivision. The residents of our community didn't build their homes in Windcastle to be part of a transition subdivision. We have had two P&Z meetings, 2 private meetings with Mr. Goss and Lombardo, and they repeat the same plan over and over. Lombardo may build nice houses in the right setting, but Windcastle is not the place. There is nothing in a Lombardo development that comes remotely close to our neighborhood. Lombardo homes are nothing more than modified tract houses. That's not what Windcastle residents signed up for. This was recognized by the P&Z commissioners as they said, it does not fit what's already there. Planning and zoning voted no. We're asking you to stand with the residents of Windcastle and not a builder from Michigan and do the same. From day one, we have said Lombardo wants to drive through Windcastle and use Windcastle in their name to sell their development. They say it's because the streets are public. If a public street is the sole reason for entering their development, then leave the grass and curb between lots 54 and 76 in Plat 2 it is now. They could then use the public street of Fairdale and have a Lombardo-built community that's not riding the coattails of Windcastle. We do not oppose a Plat 3, just keep Windcastle as it is and as it was sold, secluded, built, custom-built homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have any more time?
No. Could I have somebody who would like to speak in favor of Bill 4291?
I am Mac Swindle. I live at 4165 Fairdale Lane. I've lived there for 27 years and own the property that's the subject of conversation tonight for 37 years. I'm familiar with the area and I'm quite pleased that I have an opportunity to talk to you. Here is the reason I would like for you to approve this request. The streets in Windcastle are public roads. Fairdale is a public road. I want to drive on both of them. I think I should have the freedom to do so since they're part of the ownership of the people. They're provided for all of us to use. Not only that, I want our schools, our fire departments, our emergency EMS, ambulance, and police to use them without any hindrance. It will make a better development for the county. It is 3 miles one way from where I live around to the other side. So it will take these county agencies some 10 minutes or so to get from one side to the other. Also, if there's a storm and a tree blocks one entrance, these county agencies have an alternate route to get there to take care of them. It will cost the county nothing. 60% of the homes in Windcastle Plat 1 and 2 that exist now, over 60% of them lived on cul-de-sacs. You heard the transportation report earlier tonight, and it seems to me that living on a cul-de-sac would not increase the traffic by their house at all. You also heard about an accident that happened. It happened before, it's there now. This new proposal should not increase that. Earlier in the planning and zoning, they was complaining about somebody breaking into one of the houses. One lady said, this is in Windcastle now, broke into her house 2 times. I know of no such crime as that on Fairdale Lane, so I have a hard time understanding what they're talking about. So I think this is a good proposal for the county. There's some $28 million in these these homes that will be built there, and that will be taxed, and we'll be able to pay the bills. Francis Howell School District should be pleased with this proposal. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. We could have our last speaker opposed to Bill 4291. Yes, sir.
So you've heard from several of my neighbors tonight talking about the issues that we're all concerned about regarding the request for rezoning that's being tabled in front of you this evening. I don't intend to rehash that. I'm going to come from a different perspective, and I'm going to tell you why I bought in Windcastle and how I got there, because I don't have the history that my neighbors do. So I work for the Boeing Company. I have for the past 30 years. I am currently the executive director for production operations on the F-18 and F-15 fighter jet production programs. And when Boeing asked me to relocate from Philadelphia to St. Louis earlier this year, one of the first things I did was reach out to my fellow professional colleagues at Boeing and ask them, where do you live and what kind of recommendations do you have in terms of where I should put my home search? And what did not come back to me was St. Charles. What did come back were developments that were in Wildwood and Clarkson Valley and Chesterfield, and that's where you should go because that's where the professionals go, and that's when people come to St. Louis, that's where they go. So that's where we had our home search. And my wife and I embarked on several house hunting trips. We saw dozens and dozens of neighborhoods, easily 100 homes. And at the end of that, we were left with kind of an empty feeling because we didn't see that one house and that one development that stood out that said that that's where we wanted to live and that's where we wanted to raise our family. So there was always something that detracted, whether it was the size of the lots or the proximity of one house to another, or the style of the homes, or maybe there was a substation in view of the entrance, or it was on a busy street. There was always something. So then Windcastle came across my desk, and there was this opportunity to drive through the community. And when my wife and I did, the first thing we did when we rounded the Castle Monument going into development was say that this is the epitome of elegance. The homes that we saw were incredible. They were all custom built, and they were beautiful, one after another. And there weren't any two that were alike. And we were able to drive in, left, right, all the way to the end. You couldn't go out and then turn around and go back out again. And it was incredible. We saw kids riding bikes, and we saw people walking dogs, and we saw deer in the side yards, you know. And we just saw these things that were important to us because we have 3 young kids of our own that we're raising and that we're bringing to St. Louis. So we bought the house. We don't regret that for a second. We love the home. We love the community. We love the development, everything about it. What I've found since I've been there is that there is this peacefulness, there's a serenity, there's privacy that's associated with that development that we wouldn't have gotten in other developments, and that made this special. And what scares me is that if this becomes a drive-through community, regardless of the traffic study, there will be increased pedestrian traffic, there will be increased vehicular traffic, increased bicycle traffic. And with that, there can be the element of an introduction of crime. But more cars means there would be more risk, and with kids, that worries me. So what I'm asking for you to do is to hear what I said and why I lived here, listen to what my neighbors have said in terms of their concerns, hear the power of all of Windcastle residents that are here behind me, and understand that the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the same arguments several times and voted to say no. So my request to you is to vote no for the request for the rezoning. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. We have our final speaker in favor of Bill 4291.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Brad Goss. My office is at 1475 Fairgrounds Road in St. Charles, Missouri. I have offices also in Clayton, Missouri as well. I represent the applicant, Lombardo Homes. Lombardo Homes is a local builder. Their offices are in Wing Haven, and the head of the company here in St. Louis lives in St. Charles County, as do most of the employees of Lombardo Homes. So it's very much a local company despite its incorporation in the state of Michigan. The comments have been made tonight with respect to streets. We took them seriously. We hired a traffic consultant, Lee Cannon from CBB. As you know, Lee Cannon and CBB is who the county hired for many of their studies. They have a great reputation, and their conclusions are that the connection of this street does not change the character of the street and does not make the street unsafe, and in fact is warranted as it continues the county transportation plan and what's called for overall. The Colville Fire Protection District does mandate this connection by virtue of their ordinance. The variance that would be allowed would be a variance for topography. There is no topography challenge here. Connecting those 2 streets is something that can easily be done. And so in terms of applying for variance, it's not something that we're going to be able to get granted, given there's really no exigency that would justify us getting that kind of variance. With respect to the subdivisions themselves, we really have 4 different subdivisions we're trying to balance. Windcastle, Windcastle Plat 2, which is actually divided into two sets of lots. You have lots north of the gate that are one size. You have another lots that are south of the gate in Windcastle Plat 2, which are much larger size. The lots that are north of the gate, all the lots in the bluffs at Windcastle, you compare those, the average lot size in the bluffs of Windcastle is actually larger than the average lot size of the lots in the Windcastle Plat 2 north of the gate. That's the materials that I handed you. Then we have Fairdale. We're trying to balance that, which is homes of a much lesser value, much lesser size. Those are half-acre lots, as opposed to the lots that we're talking about, they're equivalent of 1 acre in Windcastle. So we're trying to balance all of those different things as we work with these subdivisions and try to make all of this work. We've given you a lot of information with respect to value of homes and sale of homes. I gave you pictures of the homes so that you get an idea of what Lombardo is going to build. I gave you a list of the covenants so that you can see that they are the equivalent covenants of Windcastle. The questions raised about the side entry garages. All the lots in the bluffs of Windcastle have side entry garages with the exception of 8 lots. On those, we're making them optional because of the topography. So if somebody wants to put a side entry garage in there, we will do it, but there's going to be a lot of additional expense because of topography and need to put in retaining walls, et cetera. That same exception exists in the Windcastle covenants. They also have a topography exception as well. Windcastle Plat 2 allows vinyl on the rear of its homes. We will not allow that. Our covenants actually exceed theirs in that respect. Happy to answer any questions in the more detailed part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other topics that anybody would like to come up and talk to the county council on? Okay, seeing none, that concludes public comment. Moving on to the oral report from the county executive. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, no report tonight.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Moving on to consent agenda. Guys?
Motion for approval is presented.
Second.
Second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda has been approved. Moving on for bills for introduction. 4290.
Bill number 4290, request by Steve Elman, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance adopting and appropriating the fiscal year 2016 budget for St. Charles County, Missouri.
Any questions or comments on 4290? Seeing none, moving on to Bill 4291.
Bill number 4291, request by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by John White, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from R1A Single Family Residential District, 1 acre minimum lot size, to R1B Single Family Residential District, 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, as per application RZ 15-000015.
Any questions or comments on 4291?
I have a question for staff.
Wayne, you want Wayne to come up, or
I can just, whatever.
Wayne or Robert or who?
Looking at the development standards in the UDO, why weren't there sidewalks put in plot 1 and 2 of Windcastle? And why aren't there sidewalks in this new plot? And I'm hearing that there's no curbs and storm sewers. Is there a reason for all that?
Plats 1 and 2, I don't have information with me currently about why there weren't sidewalks put in for plats 1 and 2. Plats 3, we're proposing to have sidewalks along certain lots, and these would be basically the connection street. The street that would connect the two subdivisions would have a sidewalk along it, but the cul-de-sacs would not have sidewalks along it. That's what they're proposing.
But the sidewalks would be like a sidewalk to nowhere, right?
It would be a segment of sidewalk that, there's no sidewalks in plats 1 and 2, so there'd be nothing to connect to there.
Right.
Yes.
And then there's curbs on plat 1 and 2, but not 3?
On plot 1 and plat 2, yes, there's curbs. They're kind of, I think they call them rollout curbs. Plat 3, the northern portion would have curbs and gutters and storm sewers, and it would lead stormwater to a detention basin. The southern portion is proposed not to have curbs and gutters, and instead it would have swells to slow down the water, try to get it infiltrated in the soil and to disperse the water rather than to combine the water and have to deal with it. And the reason is because the southern part slopes down to the bluffs, and it's very steep back there, and to put a detention basin on those bluffs just technically is difficult. It's difficult to get down there to maintain it. So the idea, instead of to combine all that water together, to disperse it at the source and to deal with it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
You have it, Michael?
Good.
What, Robert, well, let me ask Mr. Ruff.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question, sir. You can come up here, yeah. What is the, as you guys know, John White represents your area, and he's on vacation right now, but he'll be back, and I hope you've been addressing calls and so forth to him, but is the biggest objection the through street to Fairdale?
I would say that's the biggest one.
And so, see, I'm trying to figure out what, you know, the zoning, the zoning on this, the zoning is, what it, Wayne, could you come up here? I'm trying to, or is this Robert's question?
Robert can answer this one too.
Robert,
Nicely done.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back and forth. You can sit down for a minute, but I wanted to, on, what they're explaining is the fire department is the one requiring a through street, correct?
Correct. There's actually two components to this. Planning and zoning
Is
staff.
there a map? Did Jack put a map up there so we can, does he have a map in there?
What kind of map do you want?
Just a, yeah, so we can see the road, so we're talking. Yeah, but does it lay out?
Here's right here if you want.
Give me that.
Can you put that on, Jack?
Here it
Okay.
is.
Is that it?
It's easier for us to see down here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Can you see it? So,
So, Robert, or Robert, let me just ask Robert these questions.
Sure.
So the objection is that the through street for Fairdale. And if Fairdale wasn't, is that mandated by the fire department, is that correct?
yeah, it's under ordinance number 20, appendix D as in David.
Robert?
I can explain that if you'd like. Planning and zoning staff customarily recommends connection where there's more than 80 lots. Now, that's a policy of ours, and it's not written down as a rule. The fire department district, though, actually has an ordinance in place that was adopted in 2009. Then when it's more than 100 lots that are served by one entrance, that they require two different connections for various reasons. And actually, the model 2009 fire code stated 30 lots, but they amended that 2009 to 100 lots after consulting with the Home Builders Association. And as I understand it, most, if not all, of the fire districts in the county have this rule about more than 100 homes being served, more than one way in and out.
How many lots is it now? It's, the one is 70, which one is the proposal?
Well,
Proposal's 38. Proposal's 38, and you've got 76 or so in Newcastle.
right, there would be a couple of ways of doing this. One, if there's a cul-de-sac coming from the Windcastle side, it'd be more than 100 lots. If there's a cul-de-sac coming from the Fairdale side, there would not be more than 100 lots. Or you could do a private street with gates and have Knox box that the fire department would have keys to. Now, having said that, that's not what the developer's proposing. Developer is proposing to have a street connecting these two stub streets. There's a stub street coming from the west and a stub street coming from the east. And the developer is proposing to connect these with the street. That'd be a public street and with a connection. And so that complies with our subdivision regulations in terms of its design. That meets our minimum subdivision code standards for the county.
Joe, can we ask the developer why we haven't looked at a private street then with the Knox boxes?
We have.
Okay.
But the street would be private for our subdivision alone, and we're not willing to do that. We are willing if Windcastle Plats 1 and 2 became private streets, so they were all private streets, but we don't believe it's fair for the residents, the Bluffs at Windcastle, to be a private street and pay the cost of maintaining that street, which will be built to county standards, as opposed to the Windcastle Plat 1 and 2 folks, particularly when Windcastle Plat 2 has a stub street. It's Outlot B, which is plainly shown on the plat, and Fairdale is a stub street. And so the county policy calls for connecting them. So making the Bluffs of Windcastle streets private and the others to be public is not fair. And that's why we were unwilling to do that.
I've got a question.
Would the residents, I mean, this is something for you guys to consider, you know, would you consider turning yours into private streets also then? Just something to think about. No answer required now, obviously, but.
Well, let me ask you a
That's out of
question.
business altogether.
Brad, you're saying the residents that at the proposed subdivision, but there are no residents there, so they would be buying that with that intention. So how could that be unfair?
Because those residents shouldn't have to bear the cost of a private street when everyone else has a public street. They're bearing a cost which the other residents in Windcastle are not having to bear.
You're
We
talking
don't
about the
believe-
maintenance cost,
Yeah, exactly.
not the initial cost, because you got to do that
They'll also,
regardless.
they'll also have to have snow plowing, snow removal. They'll also have annual maintenance and sealing, street sealing, which Windcastle residents will not have to bear. And that's not something that should be imposed in the Bluffs at Windcastle, particularly when there simply isn't any kind of traffic justification for this. You're not talking about a street whose character is overloaded or character is changed. What this study shows is even if you took all the traffic from the north and ran it down through Windcastle, which isn't going to happen, you're still well within the capacity of a residential street. It doesn't change the character of that street.
Mr. Cronin?
Two questions, I guess. One is if combined with plots 1 and 2 are 76 homes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I took notes on this, and this new development is 38. So you got
Correct.
114.
Yep.
County standard's 80, fire district's 100.
Yep.
You're just a smidge over. Did you ever think about applying for a variance to county and the fire district? Okay, keeping the streets public like you're saying, okay? But applying a variance for that second entrance? That being said,
Yeah,
the
we
residents
did.
out here, I'm a big fan of 2 entrances because if you have a heart attack and that tree fell over down the road, it's a nice thing to be able to get another fire truck in there or EMS crew. But did you think about doing that? Because this sounds to me like that might make these folks' concerns, a lot of that go away. And it might actually enhance the value of subdivision because you heard these folks say they like a private subdivision and they wouldn't have that to deal with. That Plat 3 would be a private subdivision too.
We did think about it.
Yeah.
We looked at the ordinance. The ordinance says that if you have over 100 lots, you can apply for a variance if there are topography considerations. There are no topography considerations. The northern part of the Bluffs at Windcastle is flat. You can easily connect Windcastle Drive to Fairdale. There's no topography consideration that would support that variance. And I can tell you that my experience with the Cottleville Fire Protection District has been a long one. And at one point, I had a client who owns a country club that you're familiar with out in Whitmore. They wanted them to sprinkler an awning. That's how serious they take fire protection. So based on that and based on I did not see how we could fit the criteria, it was not something that I thought we could successfully obtain from them. If Mark Bailey and the Cottleville Fire Protection District told us that we could put up a gate with a Knox box, we would do that. We don't oppose it. We said that planning and zoning. However, my experience in looking at their ordinance tells me we don't qualify for that variance. If the county wants to support us in that application and chairman wants to come down or you want to come down and meet with Cottleville Fire Protection District with me, I am more than happy to do that. Don't oppose it. But I think us going there alone and asking for this, based on their ordinance and my experience, I don't believe it would be granted.
Greg, when did the fire district start dictating zoning laws to us? I'm a little confused there.
Health and safety.
Well, in the fire districts have the authority to adopt fire codes within, and that governs within their districts. The county has a fire code that applies outside of fire districts, which isn't very many places. And it's a safety issue falling within fire regulations, so it's within the fire district authority to do that.
Okay. Yeah, Mike?
I'm just curious. So you could already, without going through any of this, you could build 35 home sites on 1 acre lots right now, correct?
More or less. You'd lose some, but basically that's right.
I mean, isn't that how it's currently zoned?
Yes, you could do that.
Okay.
And what we're fussing about is 3 lots, and because we have a 38 lot proposal. The reason we're not doing that is because to do that means that you have to clear a lot more of the site, because you have to make the site balance, as you guys know very well. Site, when you have topography, you've got highs and lows, you have to level it out so that the stormwater will drain properly and your sanitary sewers will, drain properly. And so you have to balance the site. Now, what that means is we'd have to clear a ton of that site. Right now, with the proposed plan, there's about 27 acres of trees on that site. We're preserving approximately half of those, almost half, 50% of the site. We've got 13 plus acres of trees that we are keeping. The county requirement is that we keep 25% of the trees. So we're well in excess of the tree preservation requirement with this proposal. That's why we're doing it, because by doing this development and this proposal, we end up being less destructive to this site. And it's the same to your question of the stormwater. That's the same reason we're using a low-impact stormwater system in most of the site, because we're going to be able to capture that water and be less destructive. It's a preferred method of doing stormwater treatment these days. You not only hold the water back, but you also clean it with this kind of system.
So the 13 or 14 acres of woods that's preserved, that would be common ground, right, for the subdivision?
No, they'll be in lots.
Be in lots.
They'll be in lots. For the most part, I mean, there's some common ground, but for the most part, they'll be in lots.
Okay, Joe, or you have any more questions?
I mean, the alternative way to do that would be a cluster development. And then we would set it aside with, and make it common ground, and we'd have lots that are 14,500 square feet in size. That'd be the largest lot I could have. And I can do that as a matter of right without going in for rezoning, because I use the existing R1A zoning classification to do that. So that's a different alternative that we could do. We don't want to do that. We think because the lots being smaller, 14,500 square feet, the home values are going to correspondingly shrink. And we don't think that's what the folks at Windcastle want. So by doing what we're doing, we don't have smaller lots, and we have higher home prices.
Wayne?
We've spent a lot of time talking about kind of design of the subdivision, and there's really 2 issues on your agenda. This first one is dealing with the zoning, whether the zoning should be, as it currently is, R1A, which is 1 acre lots. They're requesting an R1B, which would be half acre lots. The next issue on your agenda, Bill 4292, is dealing with the platting of the property and all of the discussion that we've been having, whether that plat is acceptable. So I just wanted to make sure that we all understand that there's 2 agenda items. We've spent a lot of time talking about the subdivision development and not about the rezoning of the property.
I'm glad you said that, actually. Now, let me ask you a question. Does the rezoning of the property hit the master plan?
It fits the master plan, and even further than that, since that master plan is done at a very high level. When you look at the surrounding property and the surrounding zoning of the property, this is right next to R1B, which is Plat 2 of the subdivision.
So the lots adjacent to it?
So they're asking for the same zoning that is adjacent to them.
Okay. Any other comments? We generally don't usually exchange, but since sir, you'd raise your hand. But if you want to come up, because John White would normally probably allow some of his constituents to come up. So if you want to come up, and we just don't want to have an exchange, all day long.
With all due respect, I just want to clarify a couple of things that have gone on in the 20 hours that the Planning and Zoning Committee and the residents of Windcastle have spent.
Would you mind introducing yourself first? I'm sorry.
My name is Frank Tocco. I live at 28 Windcastle. Great. Mr. Goss started out our second meeting with the residents at the request of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners to come up with some kind of compromise or resolution. Mr. Goss started that out by the way he ended his conversation here, that he didn't need us. He could build cluster homes. Do you want that? And I stood up at the meeting and said, to me that feels an awful lot like a threat. The follow-up letter to that was that it was purely informational. The residents don't know. That's a bunch of baloney. The residents know. We know what's going on. So cluster homes, that was a threat. He's threatening again. The traffic study, Planning and Zoning brought it up. I think you guys know this, unless it's changed, because I don't want to misspeak. It was done over 4 hours on one day. Okay? Planning and Zoning Committee said, we don't think that's very good sampling. Our esteemed engineer said it is a good sampling. You guys be the judge. It was from 7 to 9 and some afternoon hours on, 4 to 6 on one day. And it didn't take into account, on an official basis, the traffic coming from Jacobs Landing and the surrounding subdivisions. He interpolated it to say, well, even if we included that, then there will be so many cars, blah, 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 1,000, 2,000, whatever it was. The reason they don't want to do 1 acre, there's no profit in it for them. That's the simple answer. When he's asked to compromise with the residents, come up with a resolution, not one change, that's the reason that the Planning and Zoning Committee denied that request. Mr. Goss put the zoning and the plat together, as was mentioned. Well, the plat is a real bad deal, in our opinion. The zoning, you can argue it's the same, backs up the plat too. Okay, that's not a problem.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Obviously, we understand the developer's going to provide us with information that benefits him. We get that.
Right.
But is there any way that your group can produce a traffic study that would contradict what their traffic study is, so we have some kind of information to go on?
We can certainly do one.
I mean, if you're basing that as an argument, we have no information of fact that would produce that.
Yeah.
But if you have something that says contradicts what they're saying,
Yep.
then I think that might be a little helpful information for us to go on, because we're not going to pay for traffic studies,
Right. The only thing I can say is we had an engineer up here from our subdivision that said that he didn't believe it was a good statistical measure. Not arguing, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. But to directly answer your question, I think we could.
I'm not requiring that. I'm just
No.
saying that might be some good information.
Right.
And the other question is Greg, is this this requires a supermajority on this?
As a rezoning, it's simple majority.
Simple majority with a denial from planning and zoning?
Yes.
Okay.
And Joe, the last thing I want to say, and I'll sit down. If this developer comes through Fairdale without connecting to Windcastle, I've heard the argument that they're public streets, so we have the right. Really, it's a wham, we don't want to do it that way. If they come through Fairdale, that's 38 homes that they're proposing. There are no ordinance county-wise or fire protection-wise. If they come through there, they can build whatever they want. So now they're saying, well, there's 116, so gee, we can't get a variance because it's over 100. Well, then come through Fairdale, use your own integrity, use your own strength as a builder to build out this community, and leave it alone. Leave us alone. Build whatever you want. Build your cluster homes if you want. I don't care. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay. Any other comments from the council?
I'd just like to point out, it seems to me it's pretty obvious this is not really a zoning issue. I think you folks 38 houses compared to 35, couple of houses that have garages that face forward. We're not that big a deal. It gets down to the street. It's a street issue. And I think that's what we have to consider here is, the fire protection district and the street. And obviously, you can see we asked quite a few questions concerning, other ways of doing the street. And I think that's what we have to take a look at here, not necessarily the size of the lots and that kind of thing.
And also, I'd recommend that you get with John White to see if there is any compromises that you could eliminate and access, or whatever the options are. I don't know. And if Mr. Goss is willing to do something as a trade-off, I don't know. Maybe he's not. So that's just food for thought. But, all right, moving on. Anything else? All right, moving on to Bill 4292.
Bill number 4292, request by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by John White, an ordinance of the County of St. Charles, Missouri, approving the preliminary plat of the Bluffs at Windcastle.
Any questions or concerns on 4292? Same issue.
I have one quick question for Mr. Goss. Does Lombardo Homes own this land already, or is this still owned by Schaefer Holdings?
Correct. It's
still owned by Schaefer Holdings?
That's correct. It's under contract and to be bought.
Is there a contingency on that contract
Yes.
of whether or not this gets approved?
I'm not going to discuss the specific contract terms, but it is not something that they would proceed with if the plan is not an adequate plan.
Just curious. Thank you.
I have a question for him.
Yes.
Oh, don't run away.
If your development, if we approved the rezoning and your development was plotted differently or would hook into Fairdale, what type of inconvenience, or I should say, what kind of hardship would that be on your developer coming in off of Fairdale instead coming off of the Windcastle subdivision?
It would be a real hardship because it changes the focus of the development from being something that's integrated in the overall area. Our entrance would be off of, again, Fairdale. It's not as a direct entrance that's coming off of Pittman, which we think is preferable for some buyers, and so it would be a hardship. It changes the character of the subdivision in that regard. Again, we're trying to balance the character of Windcastle, Fairdale. If all we're doing is coming off Fairdale, well, that's a far different deal. So it definitely changes the character.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to the next bill, 4293.
Bill number 4293, request by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 15-000009 for automobile and truck sales to Mid-Jeff Properties Incorporated and Parminder Singh.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4293? I do have a couple questions if anybody else doesn't. I guess Wayne or Robert, whoever wants to.
Yes.
Now, Robert, this was a filling station before
Right.
this, right?
Right.
And so is it a zoning, what is the actual, is it conditional use for a used car lot, or what is it?
That's correct. It's currently zoned commercial, and it has been since, I believe, 1959, with the inception of zoning. But actually, automobile and truck sales is a conditional use permit in this zoning district. So if it's a convenience store, let's just say, like auto repair would not have to come before this body for approval, but automobile sales do, for an example.
Yeah, and just for the public out there, you guys made some comments like the business wouldn't make it and all that stuff. Those are things we can't determine whether or not that's none of our business, whether it's a good business decision or a bad business decision. It's just based on capitalism, so we're not going to that's none of our concern. Some of the things that we are talking about, though, is I don't know if you guys saw that there is a conditional use. There are conditions that are put on, and did you guys see the conditions that are put on the list of? Well, because about everything you guys mentioned, there's on the conditions it has to go through. It goes through us, but then it has to go through the community development on all these conditions, and they have to. Everything has to be paved. It has to be shown on an engineer survey. Landscape and stormwater requirements will be required with parking lot and building expansion. Customer employment parking must be provided and signed Unified Development Ordinance says, say, lighting shall not obstruct or interfere with travel along Callahan Road and cast upon the residential property. So they also will have to turn in a, on some of the other, when they do that, they have to show it's a light setback, right, Robert? And
Right, a
explain
lighting
that.
plan. Yeah, there's, we have specific standards for how much light can actually cross the property on the residential property. And so the lighting plan will need to show that less than a certain amount of light, a minimum amount of light will cross on the residential property.
So it can't actually cross, the lighting will be pushed forward, it won't be going towards the residential property, correct?
Right, essentially the light's got to shine towards the commercial property and away from residential.
I mean, just to be honest, you guys, when this was a filling station, it was probably would have been a lot worse than it would be what this guy's trying to propose. But I'm not saying I'm in favor of it. I'm just trying to have some dialogue here so we can figure it out. But let's see, if you read through all these other lighting, vehicles displayed for sale should be parked in a manner in which each vehicle is independently maneuverable. Okay, due to stormwater problems in the area, the pollution of Lake St. Louis, stormwater treatment shall be required for the purpose of collecting, storing, infiltrating, filtering stormwater runoff. So he'll have to make sure all that's controlled as well. In the case of conditional use, just about everything that you guys are talking about is on the conditional use. So I think that if we could get that email to you, you could look at it, and then when you come back, or you can call me and you give me your specific concerns. They can't be, items that we can't have no control over, like the mosquitoes. I mean, come on, we can't do anything about that, but we can tell them where the lights cannot shine. There can be a 50-foot setback or whatever's reasonable.
Can you
And
tell them how many cars? Because
we can consider that, yeah.
he had 20, and now he's telling us 60,
We'll have that conversation. I'll talk to planning and zoning and see what a reasonable amount is. I mean, we don't want to give total interference to a person trying to operate a business. You got to be reasonable, And when it was a filling station, I mean, they had cars parked on it and oil leaking all over.
No, sir, we never had cars or anything behind that filling station ever coming up close to our property.
Okay,
The
well,
only
let's,
thing we
hold.
would have once a year was the fireworks stand. We knew that was always gonna be right up against our fence, but it was only temporary for 6 weeks, then it goes away. This is not a temporary thing, this is a permanent thing
Okay.
that he's asking for.
Well, what we'll do then is we can put conditions on all those sort of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, you guys you got your emails, you can ask Don or Carol, they can send you that, or you can is it online? Are these bills online?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so get online and then call them, they'll give you my phone number. And call me, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go from there. Anybody got those questions? Anybody? Michael?
We're good.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys, thank you. We'll move on to the next one.
Bill number 4294,
Yep.
requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by John White. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from AFFFW, Agricultural District with Floodway Fringe and Floodway Overlay Districts, to I-1FFFW, Light Industrial District with Floodway Fringe and Floodway Overlay District as per application RZ 15-000016.
Any questions or comments on 4294? Seeing none, moving to 4295.
Bill number 4295, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by Mike Elam, an ordinance placing the creation of the Guttermouth Road Wood Glen Estates Sanitary Sewer Neighborhood Improvement District on the April 5th, 2016 ballot.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4295? Seeing none, moving on. Just 1 second. If you guys want to go, we can take a 3-minute break if you guys want to go, because we got a list of this stuff, and we're done talking about your subdivision. Oh, the next meeting, when is the next meeting?
2 weeks from tonight.
December 21st, this will come up again for the second reading, so make sure you get with John White and try to get some help with this.
He's not gonna build it.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, thank you.
You got it, Frank. Take care. They do that all the time. It's one sources, the estates. Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much for coming.
Nice work.
You guys ready? Okay, Donna, did we do 4295?
We
Carol?
did do
We did
4295.
4295.
Yes, we're on bill number 4296.
All right, Bill 4296.
Requested by Bob Schnur and Rich Krismer, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance amending the 2015 budget of St. Charles County, Missouri by adopted by ordinance 14-109 by transferring appropriations between budget categories in the Office of the Election Authority to fund higher than expected expenditures for election judges in the August 2015 election.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4296? Seeing none, moving to Bill 4297.
Bill number 4297, requested by Rich Krismer, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance approving intergovernmental agreements with the Missouri Secretary of State for grants awarded to the St. Charles County Election Authority in the amount of $41,780 for assistance in making improvements to the election process pursuant to the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, and $83,560 for assistance in replacing voting equipment, state voting systems grant.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4297? Seeing none, 4298.
Bill number 4298, requested by Scott Drochnik, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute a project contract with St. Charles Community College for services provided by the Missouri Job Center of St. Charles County.
Any questions or comments on 4298? Seeing none, 4299.
Bill number 4299, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute agreements for advocacy and lobbying services.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, moving on.
Bill number 4300, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute a professional service agreement between St. Charles County, Missouri and the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Missouri in conjunction with the Missouri Highway Patrol as fiscal agent and Edward L. Dowd III as an independent contractor.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4300? Seeing none, moving on.
Bill number 4301, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute the influenza immunization through school clinics project intergovernmental agreement with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, Bureau of Immunizations, and the St. Charles County Department of Community Health and the Environment related to a grant award of up to $18,750 for reimbursement of expenditures relating to immunizing pre-kindergarten through 12th grade students in school-located influenza vaccination clinics.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4301? Seeing none, moving on.
Bill number 4302, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance approving execution of two form intergovernmental agreements with municipalities to provide kenneling services or kenneling services and enforcement.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4302?
I have a question, I guess. I think this is a nice service we're providing for the cities, but my question is, I know the last meeting, we was $260,000 for a tick room for the animals center. Are you guys comfortable, the administration comfortable with the added expense of killing all these dogs for all the municipalities? Or is this going to be a budgetary issue down the road, or no?
I'm sorry, for a moment I thought you said, are you comfortable with killing all these dogs? So you threw me for a moment, but.
That's what I thought he said also.
Yeah.
I was going to let that go.
It dawned on me you meant kenneling, and I had misunderstood you.
Kenneling, not killing.
And
Killing all
yes,
these
so
dogs.
a good portion of in fact, the entire back row of the current animal facility out at the Pet Adoption Center is items that we are storing, dog food, cat pan litter, medical supplies, all that. It's all back there. The addition to the garage will allow us to move storage into a more appropriate storage area and free up the heated and air-cooled kennel space. So that, based on, and Don can go into more detail if you like, but a study that Don did with Teresa Williams out there, we believe absolutely that so long as the city of St. Charles is running their operation, that we can accommodate the additional dogs and cats we would get from Wentzville and O'Fallon. Remember, we're already doing it for most of the rest of the county.
Right.
So we absolutely believe that we can do that.
Well, that's great, because that's a good service for Wentzville and O'Fallon, so they should be appreciative of it.
And Don warned all the cities from the very beginning, if things change with the city of St. Charles and they decide to come in, we'll have to revisit this. We'll have to look at the possibility of some expense to this. City has now indicated they would like to do some discussion in 2016 about what advantages, pros, and cons it might have for them.
Okay.
That it?
That's it.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to Bill 4303.
Bill number 4303, request by Hope Woodson, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance amending Chapter 205 Ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, Animal Regulations.
Any questions or comments?
I got another one on this.
Yes, Mr. Cronin.
I read like 44 pages into this bill, okay, and the new regulations, and I just thought, well, my eyes were weeping, I thought, I'm going to take a break. But is there anything in here besides getting rid of the roosters from subdivisions? Is there any, I saw a lot of look like cleanup language in there. Is there anything, any substantial other changes other than letting that man get some sleep that had a rooster next door every night? I felt sorry for that fellow.
We looked at, there's actually 11 different significant changes, but most of it was cleaning it up, streamlining it a little bit more, cleaning up a little bit of the language, modernizing it a little bit, updating the fees and so forth. But the rooster provision was probably the biggest
Can
one.
you get us a memo that just has those 11 changes that you just mentioned?
Sure.
I was kind of like Joe. It was,
It's a lot.
There was a lot, and I got tired of playing, where's Waldo on the changes. So just
Yeah,
lay
and
it
I
out
kind of
for
broke
us.
it down between 11 different things, and I can kind of bullet point each of
That'd
those
be great.
11
That'd be
headings.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I got a question. You want to go, Dave? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Hope, couple things. It says dangerous animals, okay? So is that going to be, is that defined in a proper fashion?
Dangerous and exotic animals, yes. Under the definitions, it's properly defined. Basically, anything that is venomous, has the potential to harm, kill, that isn't indigenous to the United States.
Okay, so we had this conversation about these snakes.
Yes.
Okay? Now, you rattlesnakes, those kind of.
Anything poisonous would not be allowed to be kept
Okay,
in the home.
what about the big snakes,
Like a python.
the pythons? We gotta, what are we doing about that? Because
A python isn't poisonous.
It's also
So
not indigenous.
it's a tricky, that's a tricky subject. With the pythons, we've consulted with the zoo, and basically we've kind of come up with some snake protocols, snake best practices, if somebody is going to be harboring snakes. And if a snake is kept well, fed well, housed well, it's really no danger to its surroundings or anybody else. If it's not fed well, if it's not kept well, if it's not confined well, then we would be called out and we would look at that situation and then we could take that snake. But
okay, is there a number on snakes?
there is not a number. on
Okay,
snakes.
let me just tell you guys what happened, and you're
Does
gonna.
this involve killing a rooster?
I wish it did, but it didn't. No.
I was just thinking, we may be able to solve two problems with one here.
So currently, you can have multiple pythons, and when they have multiple pythons, they put rats and they put mice in big containers, and they're alive, and there's hundreds of them. And this was a scenario down in Defiance, and they're in an apartment complex. So I just find it, I find it very, and it's not illegal. So I find it very hard to believe that it's reasonable for the person who's living next door that doesn't know that this person has 25 snakes that could get out and kill their baby in a minute. And I mean, it's just disgusting. And then they got all these rats and all these mice, hundreds of them.
How can they have them?
We actually went out and inspected that facility, our apartment, pretty closely. And per our ordinance, we couldn't find any violations. They had a very meticulous setup of keeping the snakes, feeding the snakes, cleaning up daily after the snakes. There was no odor. Other people who shared that apartment complex also harbored snakes as well.
Oh, interesting.
It was an interesting setup. but it was well kept for the type of setup it was. And we do make regular visits out there to make sure that they are keeping it up.
Greg, how reasonable is it to, and I asked this question, I don't know, it got lost in the conversation somewhere, but is it reasonable to assume that you can have those kind of pets in an apartment complex when the neighbors are not aware or have no decision in the process? I mean, you have mice and rats, and they're going to get out too. I mean, is that sanitary, or is that is that reasonable to believe that they could do that?
I understand the snake part actually a little better than I understand their food. How could you have the mice and rats? Or I would think there'd be a number of mice and rats that you could keep.
As long as they're housed properly, contained properly, and fed properly, there's not much that we can do about that, as long as they're maintaining them well. And in this particular situation, they were maintaining them very well.
Like those big tanks you put grapes in, like that are real big, and there's like just hundreds of mice and rats, and they're moving all over the place.
They're making wine. You asked Greg a question. I don't think he answered it.
You didn't answer it, Greg.
Well, I was going to punt anyway, because first of all, I'm not really hearing a legal issue in the question, but now Mr. Hefner has worked on this bill with the health department, and I have not been involved with it, so I would defer to Mr. Hefner.
Drew's just dying to jump up here, too. Come on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
Can I ask Drew a question?
Absolutely.
Get up at the mic so the rest of the world can hear you. All right, when we're talking about what you can do, are we talking about what you can do under the existing ordinance, or how could you make the ordinance tighter? Are you saying we can't make the ordinance tighter? Or, I understand under the existing ordinance, everything's fine. But is there any reason, in spite of what we can or can't do under the existing ordinance, are you saying we can't get tougher on snakes if we don't?
I think that by ordinance, that is something we could do if we choose to do.
So what you've been saying, what we can and can't do, you're basing that on what we can and can't do under the existing ordinance.
Under the existing ordinance as well as the proposed ordinance.
So as long as what we change it to is reasonable.
We made that one lady get rid of some of her dogs because, she had too many of them.
4 dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
She had 9 she had to get rid of.
And you can have 50 snakes in your apartment next door.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
I think we've come up with a total number of feet of snake that you can have.
And we've created an exemption specifically for caged reptiles. And so that's something you wanted to change. That's something we could look at.
Well, the thing is, on a python, was a rule of thumb, 12 feet, or we had that conversation, if it's more than 12 feet, it can squeeze somebody to death, right? Isn't that?
It's technically, and we consulted with several people on this, a python isn't dangerous if it's fed well. It's no danger to a human, a child, a dog, if it's fed well. If it isn't fed well, then it is a danger.
You could say the same thing about a lion, though. If it's fed well, it's not.
That's prohibited.
He's not hungry, he's okay.
Yeah.
I think that we'll have a conversation later on the mice and rats. I'm more concerned about it in an apartment complex than an individual dwelling, because the people living next door don't have a choice in the matter. I think that's a little bit different. That's how I see it.
And again, I think that's something we could address, but we chose not to get that specific.
And then the next question is pit bulls. What are we doing? Is there anything in there? Is that a deadly animal?
No.
Not if it's fed well.
And trained properly.
Sorry. Right.
I mean, with the current events, what the heck? I don't know. I don't know about that either.
There was a bad incident in my district with a pit bull in a subdivision. I know Joanne knows about it, okay? It was a real tragic deal, and it was kind of, no way of really preventing it, but a little lady let her child go over and play with the neighbor's child, and the child said, well, you want to come in and see my puppies? And brought the strange little kid from next door up to see the puppies, and the pit bull, it was a pit bull nursing puppies, and the pit bull got the kid by the face and tore the face up pretty good. It's pretty tragic. So, I mean, you know, any animal's dangerous if you got them cornered in the right situations.
Well, that's different than Joanne had a story for me that was horrible. And how many of those cases do we have? We had a kid killed.
On pit bulls through the years, I mean, the majority of the situations that we've run into with pit bull attacks have been where we've been able to trace back that the pit bull was taught to fight or was abused. They're a powerful animal. They're like any animal in that classification. They have jaws that operate in such a way that when they bite and clench down, it's pretty hard to unclench their jaw because of the nature of how they're built. So, you know, purely pit bulls that we have no reason to believe that they've been abused or taught to fight. The only one that I can actually even think of is the one where the 2-year-old died. That I know of, there was no tracing back that dog was in any way, shape or form abused. The dog that bit in the closet, I mean, I have to say, as a long-standing dog lover of many breeds, and I, as you know, I have setters, any female with a brand-new litter in her home, in a locked closet or in a closed closet door, when a stranger throws open the door and launches themselves in, those dogs are going to be protective. I mean, it was on its own property in a controlled situation, and the kids just went right by mom, who was in the bedroom, and went in. And yeah, there was a bite. But I'm not sure that would have changed if you changed the breed.
One of the worst cases I've had since I've been here was a German Shepherd where, you know, a lady bent down to pet the dog and it just lunged at her head. And I think it comes down to more how the animal's cared for than the specific breed.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Over this past year, I've had complaints about a particular house with a subdivision, and I'm talking small lots, and they had numerous farm animals. Does this bill address farm animals at all?
In residential zoning?
Yeah.
In residentially zoned areas, the farm animals would fall, most farm animals, so with the exception of maybe some poultry, would fall under the domestic animal definition, which would mean no more than 4 animals in a residentially zoned area.
So I could have 2 sheep, and 2
2
goats.
sheep, a pig, and a dog, yes.
Yeah. Oh, you can have pigs too?
Like a potbelly pig, or yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Drew. Thank you, Hope. Moving on to 4304.
Bill number 4304, requested by Belinda Little, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance amending sections 115.160, 115.460, 115.670, 115.710, 115.720 through 115.722, and 115.740 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, all concerning the Personnel Administration Plan, including but not limited to benefits.
Any questions or comments on 4304?
Could we maybe get, before passage of this, a bullet point of the changes similar to what Hope's did on the animal bill?
Absolutely, if that's what you want, we'll
Be great.
All right, any other
get one out to you in the
questions?
next day or so.
Okay, moving on, 4305.
Bill number 4305, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance repealing the current Chapter 127 in its entirety and acting a new Chapter 127 and amending Chapters 128, 131, and 134, ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4305? What exactly is this, Joanne, or
It's a bunch of name changes.
just, what is it, Steve?
No, that was the one before.
This is the name changes, I think.
This is, so we have two departments that we've talked to you about that we're changing name with. One is Health, which is currently the Department of Community Health and the Environment. It's sometimes difficult for folks to identify who they are in that whole world of public health. So we're renaming them the Department of Public Health at their request, and it's a department-wide request. And then the Department of Workforce Development, the new director pointed out to us, he has a tough time really getting out the word in the business community. He's also part of business development, and that's part of his role. So we're renaming it the Department of Workforce and Business Development. Trying to remember what else we had in there. Oh, and then the Communications Department is being set up, as you know, that's part of the budget as well. And so that department is in here, including the moves of currently existing pieces that'll move over into that.
Okay, any other questions on that one? All right, seeing none, that concludes bills for introduction. Does anybody have any comments? I'd just like to thank Steve Ellman and Mike Klinghammer and Mr. Ward. They came down to the big Defiance Parade Saturday. They were the judges. And I've got to tell you guys, this was a real parade. We've had parades about our 6th year, and this year was a real parade. Usually there's not that many floats in it, but it was big. It was nice. It was fun too, wasn't it? It was fun. Yeah, the whole town of Defiance was in it. It was a lot of fun. And these guys were the judges, and it was a good time. And so also this weekend is the Augusta Candlelight Walk, which is a wonderful time to bring your family to. And also Friday and Saturday is the Lindenwood Boone Home Christmas Walk, which is fantastic. And next weekend is also the Daniel Boone Christmas Walk. And if you haven't been to it, I would highly recommend it. Gets you very much in the Christmas spirit. Any other comments?
Are you in the Travel and Tourism Board? Or, I'm just curious. It's like, this has been one of the most interesting meetings I've ever been part of in my life.
Mr. Chairman.
We did. We went from car lots to home subdivisions to pot-bellied pigs, snakes, and pythons. I mean, I think we've covered it all. So I would move to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Second.